Oh shit, it is actually getting pretty scary out there when you stop and look at the actual state of the world right now. I mean, think about the fact that we have 9 different countries sitting on nuclear weapons and a whole bunch of others working on something even more terrifying behind closed doors. We haven't dealt with a global tension like this in our lifetimes, and nobody honestly knows what is going to happen next. But over the past few years, there has really been one repeating news story that keeps popping up like a warning light whenever we look at Warren Buffett. It is the fact that Berkshire's cash position just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, like a massive financial fortress. Buffett finally gave us a little bit of insight into what he has actually been thinking about this wild stock market recently. He sat down for about 30 minutes with Becky Quick during the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting, and he didn't hold back. In this interview, he spoke deeply about why he has been building that legendary cash pile up to record levels. He touched on whether he actually plans to deploy that capital anytime soon, or whether he sees a massive market crash coming in the year ahead. So in this video, I want to show you guys all the important clips you absolutely need to hear from the man himself. I am going to break down exactly what he has been saying because the nuance here is where the real money is made. Also, very quickly, I want to give a massive shout out to everybody who came up and said hello over the course of the Berkshire weekend in Omaha. It was honestly so great to see you all in person and have those real conversations away from the screens. And a massive, massive thank you to everyone who came out to the launch party for the new money strategy. Big news, guys. As of today, the book is officially out in the world, which feels totally surreal. Check out the links in the description or the pinned comment if you want to learn the actual Warren Buffett strategy for yourself. I really appreciate all of you who have supported this journey so far because it has been a long road. Okay, let's get back to Buffett. And the first big question, which is why on earth is he holding $380 billion worth of cash? Becky asked him straight up about the fact that there is so much cash on hand while he is still supposedly active in the market. She pointed out that he is looking around and clearly not seeing a lot of things he actually wants to own. Buffett's response was classic because he basically said, if there's nothing good to do, then we simply don't do anything. He mentioned that in the 60 years he has been in this business, probably only 5 of them were actually juicy. He brought up Tom Watson Sr. from IBM, who was once asked why his company was so incredibly successful. Watson said, I am smart at spots and I stay around those spots. And Buffett says that is the whole game right there. This was a really interesting clip because it highlights his core strategy, which is something most retail investors totally ignore. He is not a trader and he is not an investor who is going to force himself to make 20 different investments every year just to stay busy. His secret has always been the discipline to wait, and that is exactly what he is doing this time around. He noted that there have only been 5 exceptionally juicy years in his entire multi-decade career. That means those massive life-changing opportunities don't come up very often at all. When they don't show up, he is much more inclined to keep his watch list firmly within his circle of competence and just sit on his hands. He refuses to sink money into a hot market just because he feels like his cash pile is getting a little bit too big for comfort. As Warren admits in that clip, right now is just not the ideal environment for his specific type of value investing, and that leads him to be fairly inactive while everyone else is chasing the next AI moonshot. When you look at the ways Buffett actually values the stock market, they are all screaming that things are way too expensive. Take the Shiller PE ratio, for example, which is something I've been talking about quite a bit recently. This is basically a massive price to earnings ratio for the SP 500 that looks at a 10-year average. The higher that number rises, the higher the multiple that investors are willing to pay just to own a piece of the market. In normal, healthy conditions, that number usually sits somewhere around 18 to 20. Well, I was talking to one of the guys I caught up with in Omaha this year, and he showed me something staggering. Right now, the Shiller PE is at the second highest point it has ever been in human history. The only time it was higher was right before the dot-com bubble burst, and we are actually very close to passing that peak right now. Another indicator Buffett always monitors is the Wilshire to GDP ratio, which compares the total market cap to the actual economy. It basically measures how much investors are valuing companies versus how much the U.S. economy is actually producing. Usually when this metric gets past 140%, investors start to get really worried that things are overheated. Today we are sitting at a number around 230%, which is a level we have literally never seen before. So with the market looking even more expensive than it was before the 2000 crash, Buffett just isn't finding deals. He mentioned that he understands fewer businesses as a percentage of the whole than he did 10 years ago. He is 95 years old, and he isn't going to try and pretend he's an expert on the latest software architecture. He isn't going to try and have an edge on a whole bunch of younger people who grew up using these tech products. But as he says, you don't have to understand 1,000 companies, you just have to understand a few, like Apple. That has always been the Buffett philosophy of keeping things simple and staying in your lane. The one thing he absolutely will not do is drift outside his core competencies just to chase a 10% return. Buffett acknowledges that the AI craze we are seeing right now is well outside his own understanding. And I would argue it is actually outside most people's circle of competence, even if they won. To admit it, it is a very new industry with no clear long-term winner, and nobody knows what the margins will look like in a decade. I'm sure the tech will be valuable, but at this stage it is really anyone's guess as to who comes out on top. That brings us back to Buffett's rule number one of investing, which is simply do not lose money if you aren't super confident in the outcome. It is perfectly okay to put it on the too hard pile and move on. But that is the polar opposite of the behavior we are seeing in the 2026 stock market. Rationality seems to have been left at the door in exchange for pure speculative adrenaline. In the interview, Buffett compared the modern market to a church with a massive casino attached to the side. He said people move between the church and the casino, but lately the casino has gotten very attractive. If you are buying or selling one day options, that isn't he investing or even speculating, it is just gambling. He pointed out that nobody can actually explain why they are buying an option that expires in a few hours. The quantity of those short-term bets is just incredible, and we have never seen people in a more gambling mood than right now. This is so true. And the data on short-term options actually backs up exactly what Warren is seeing. Back in 2018, the volume of options with tiny expiry dates was a small fraction of the market. But fast forward to 2026, and that trend has completely reversed into something unrecognizable. Short-term options are now the primary game in town, with more volume in daily contracts than weekly or monthly ones. It is especially wild when you look at people betting on index ETFs instead of actual companies. The stock market is turning more and more into a high-stakes casino every single day. But does that mean it is destined to fail immediately just because there are gamblers running rampant? We have stretched valuations and a market that looks more expensive than the peak of the dot-com era. So I wanted to know if Buffett actually sees the whole thing cracking in the near future. He said the most likely time to buy things is when nobody else will even answer their phones. But he also warned that a crash isn't something people usually see coming ahead of time. If everyone is talking about it and thinking about it, then it probably is going to happen that way. It is usually something that comes totally out of the blue, like a nuclear bomb or a political assassination, and this is probably the biggest thing that people get totally wrong about Warren Buffett. The news articles will always say Buffett is preparing for a crash because he has $380 billion in cash. But in his 84 years in the market, the one thing he has learned is that you can never actually anticipate a crash. You can identify when stocks are likely to underperform, but you can never predict the day the brick falls. Buffett says he doesn't like to tell people the end is coming because worrying about it doesn't do any good. It is good to be cognizant of the risks, but living in constant terror is a terrible way to invest. So with that said, what do we as value investors actually do at a time like this? Well, there are really two things we need to remember if we want to keep investing like the GOAT. Number one is that we have to keep investing from the bottom up and stay in our circle of competence. We have to build our own unique watch list of businesses and check them for moats and management. And then, of course, we have to check the valuation using the 3 steps I talk about in my book. But from there is one other thing we need more than anything else right now, and that is patience. Charlie Munger used to say we don't make money when we buy, and we don't make money when we sell. We make money while we wait for the right pitch to come across the plate. The difference between a mediocre investor and an exceptional one is always their temperament. Can you hold your nerve and keep your cash safe when everything else is flying into the stratosphere? And then when the markets finally do come down, can you keep your head and invest with total confidence? That is what it really comes down to. And if that sounds like the type of thing you want to master, then grab the book. The New Money Strategy is finally out in bookstores and airports, and I am so excited for you to read it. If you bought it already, please send me a picture of you with the book because I love seeing them. Tag me over on Instagram at newmoneyofficial or email me at hello@new.com. This book was 2 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and I am so happy it is finally in your hands. Thank you guys so much for the support and for watching this deep dive. I really appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.